Good evening. I'm Doug Apple, Chair of the New York City Rent Guidelines Board, and I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the board. This is the last meeting in a series of public meetings and hearings to determine lease adjustments for rent-stabilized housing units in New York City with leases commencing or being renewed on or after October 1, 2025, and on or before September 30th, 2026. I will now take roll call. Please respond if present. Genesis Aquino.
Present.
Alex Armlovich.
Present.
Robert Ehrlich.
Present.
Arpit Gupta.
Present.
Reed Jordan.
Present.
Alex Schwartz.
Present.
Christina Smith. Adan Soltran.
Present.
Doug Apple. I am indeed present. Let the record show we have a quorum. Before we proceed to motions, I'd like to make a few brief comments on this process. First, I would like to thank the many of our fellow New Yorkers, tenants, owners, advocates, and public officials who have participated in this process on determining rent adjustments for New York's nearly 1 million rent-stabilized apartments. I want to especially recognize everyone who testified to their personal experience at our 5 public hearings, as well as submitting over 200 written, oral, and video submissions. Second, I would like to thank the staff of the Rent Guidelines Board for their exceptional research and analysis, as well as coordinating our meetings and public hearings. Their professionalism and objectivity are essential to assuring that the board operates in a transparent manner. Finally, I want to express my gratitude to my fellow board members for volunteering their time, their insights, their commitment to New Yorkers, and their dedication to our work together. With that, let me turn to the work before us, beginning with our hotel order. Since board members only submitted one proposal prior to this meeting, we will now consider Proposal 1 for Hotel Order Number 55. The motion on hotels. I move to adopt the final language of Proposal 1 for Hotel Order Number 55. This proposal was circulated to the members of the board and posted on the RGB website on June 26, 2025. As I further move to adopt the explanatory statement and findings for Hotel Order 55, substantially in the form submitted by staff to the board as of June 30th, and to be modified by RGB staff after this meeting to reflect the adopted rental adjustments. A summary of hotel proposal number 1 is as follows. Residential Class A or apartment hotels, 0% increase. Lodging houses, 0% increase. Rooming houses, Class B buildings containing less than 30 units, 0% increase. Class B hotels, 0% increase. Single room occupancy buildings, multiple dwelling law section 248 SROs, 0% increase. May I have a second on the motion?
I second. Second.
A second. I'm now asking for any comments on the motion. Any comments? Hearing no comments, I'm going to call the vote. Genesis Aquino.
Yes.
Alex Armlovich.
Yes.
Robert Ehrlich.
No.
Arpit Gupta.
Yes.
Reed Jordan.
Yes.
Alex Schwartz.
Yes.
Christina Smith.
No.
Adan Sotram.
Yes.
Doug Apple, I vote yes. With that, the motion passes 7 votes to 2. We now move on to the apartment and loft order. would now to move a motion to adopt the final language of proposal number 50 of apartment and loft order number 57 that was circulated to the members of the board and posted on the RGB website on June 26, 2025. And I further move to adopt the explanatory statement and findings for apartment and loft order number 57, substantially in the form submitted by staff to the board as of June 30th, 2025, and to be modified by the RGB staff after this meeting to reflect the adopted rental adjustments. A summary of Proposal 50 is as follows. For apartments, 1-year lease, 3% increase. For apartments, a 2-year lease, a 4.5% increase. For lofts, a 1-year period of a 3% increase. And for a 2-year period, a 4.5% increase. On special guidelines and decontrolled units would be 49% above the maximum base rent. I ask for a second on that motion. I second. I have a second. I now ask for discussion on this motion. And I want to just remind everybody that all the statements of the board will be made part of the permanent record and posted on the RGB's website after this hearing. So I would now ask for discussion. I'll start with Rob Ehrlich. Please, Rob.
First of all, we would like to thank our fellow board members who take this responsibility very seriously, who have advocated well on behalf of their tenants, owners, and the public. Also, a special thank you to the staff, Andrew, Brian, Danielle, and Charmaine, who make our collective jobs easier. Despite the claims of tenant advocates and many of those who've spoken at public hearings, net operating income is not profit, nor is it revenue. Also, NOI, as calculated by this board, does not include many of the normal costs incurred during the operation of housing. NOI does not include major expenses or updates that are mandated by the city, state, and the federal government. And possibly the most unfortunate thing is that NOI is reported out by this board includes hundreds of thousands of free market apartments with incredibly high rents, which distort the overall data, especially for the majority of rent-stabilized buildings outside core Manhattan. In the past 12 years, the RGB has made a clear shift towards a systemic defunding of buildings. They have adjusted rents at an average of 1% below inflation. The result has been declining NOI in older buildings. If this board is going to permanently adjust rents below inflation going forward, there is only one outcome: systemic failure of the majority of rent-stabilized housing stock. This failure will be felt both financially and physically. We have heard testimony from the NYU Furman Center, the Community Preservation Corporation, and Enterprise, which confirmed as much as 20% of all rent-stabilized housing is already at risk of foreclosure. As we all know, this data lags and does not include major expenses such as capital reserves, so the actual amount of distress is worse. Once again, let us be clear, no amount of adjustment approved by this board this evening will save these buildings. The added revenue from that adjustment has already been spent. This is just what is barely necessary to continue at the same level of distress that we are currently seeing. Already, we have seen the NOI in pre-1974 buildings outside the core of Manhattan decline by more than 25% from 2020 to 2023, adjusting for inflation. All of the data available to us shows that this decline is a clear trend which is growing. Data presented next year will show that 2024 was worse and 2025 will be worse than that. From a building operations standpoint, rent adjustments below inflation are rollbacks that force building owners to cut costs. We saw in our data this year that spending on maintenance and repairs declined in 2023. Sadly, repairs and maintenance is one of the few costs housing operators can cut to keep their businesses afloat. Most costs are controlled by the government, yet these continue to rise unabated.
Violations continue to increase since 2019 when Albany passed the HSTPA and the systemic defunding of these buildings began. We respect all our colleagues up here. We understand that this is a very difficult decision and that this board is put in a position each year to the utter failures of the state elected officials and the city government to address the high cost of housing and the abject lack of supply. These are the very same public officials who come to our board to testify for rent freezes while residing in rent-stabilized apartments. This blatant conflict of interest, which at minimum should be fully disclosed prior to their testimony, goes unnoticed year after year. Yet the same politicians repeatedly fail to address property tax reform. Taxes and insurance increases year over year are devastating older rent-stabilized buildings, add high water and sewer costs, and an 11% Con Edison rate hike. When the government continues to fail, the responsibility for long-term viability of the rent-stabilized housing stock falls on this Rent Guidelines Board. If we continue to adjust rates below inflation, we are dooming buildings to failure. At a bare minimum, inflation needs to be the starting point for discussions on rent adjustments. This year, inflation is 4%. It should be the starting point for a rent adjustment on one-year leases. This board, mandated to be independent under any mayor who comes down the road, cannot continue to operate in a bubble. These buildings are systematically defunded term after term, and it's on the watch of elected officials. Sadly, anything that happens tonight will not solve the serious housing crisis that faces the not-for-profit housing providers, the supportive housing providers, the public housing providers, nor the private owners who the activists love to vilify. It's on you, elected New York City. This crisis is on you.
Done? Thank you. Are there other statements from members? No?
I'm happy to. I mean,
It's up to you.
want me to?
Alex Armlevich?
Great. I wanted to share a brief statement. I wanted to say that today's guidelines represented a difficult compromise between the competing testimonies that we received. Our one-year guideline, it most closely reflects the testimony we heard from civic organizations, regulated nonprofit affordable housing providers, and think tanks with respect to financial distress, specifically in the nonprofit affordable housing stock. After 10 years in a row of one-year guidelines below the rate of New York City area inflation, the longest such stretch of real dollar one-year rollbacks in our history as a board, the status of New York's nonprofit social housing is troubled. This year, the Community Preservation Corporation and Enterprise Community Partners took the unprecedented step of opening their books to us. The results were troubling. In balancing consideration, however, we also received testimony for the first time from the Fiscal Policy Institute. And that testimony raised the idea of New York City CPI less shelter as an interesting and useful lower bound estimate of the likely changes in operating costs over time. So our guidelines are prospective, and the data is lagging. It's retrospective, but we nonetheless expect the one-year guideline to prove to be the 11th real dollar rollback in a row, below New York City inflation yet again, but likely quite close to the Fiscal Policy Institute's New York City Less Shelter Index when next year's data comes out. I will submit the rest of my testimony in writing for consideration by the public and the rest of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other statements for the record and discussion? Please, Adam.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. So, being as this is my fourth year, rather than throw statistics and make all of the totally legitimate arguments that I would normally make, I'm taking a different route because I want to share some insights and really talk to you all, because I think that's what's most important right now. Seeing how my colleagues on this board are set to increase your rents an additional 3% this year, that's 12% in total the last 4 years, if anyone's been counting. I just want to share that I've realized in this fourth season that this board does not value affordability. It doesn't in any meaningful way. There is no way that we could come to these decisions for the fourth time in a row if we did. Instead, much like normalizing the traumatic depictions we see on television and on social media these days of human rights abuses, of civil rights abuses, civil liberties abuses, atrocities and inequities, we as a board have co-signed the normalization of unaffordability, housing insecurity, and abject poverty. I feel I must state as clearly as I can, as a public servant and as an advocate for the people, that this is not normal. Let me repeat, this is not normal. When you see human suffering, it is not normal to take actions and directly add to their suffering. That is why we must continue to take all steps necessary to organize, resist, and push back against these injustices, because we know this is not normal and it is unacceptable. There is a better way, I'm certain. Our job as a board is to review data from various sources related to housing, including affordability, in case some of you have forgotten, and make decisions that protect people, not buildings, not businesses, people. Poring over decimals and percentages from an ivory tower, focusing on the, quote, health of businesses and physical structures while paying short shrift to the struggles of actual human beings is unconscionable. What's more is that in ignoring your struggles in the data, they're ignoring you when you are telling them, what's more, in addition to ignoring your struggles as expressed in the data, they are ignoring you when they are telling them repeatedly to their faces, and even in more dire circumstances, that you need help, only for them to ignore you and give benefits to businesses instead. Since when does it make sense to see a person drowning and yelling for help, only to throw the lifeguard a life preserver? These are undisputed facts. The rent-stabilized housing stock is in declining physical shape, and something needs to be done to preserve these apartments. That is a fact. Taxes and insurance costs for most landlords are going up. That's also a fact. But do you know what else is a fact? Neither of those things is in control of rent-stabilized tenants. Do you know what else is a fact? People are paying the rent in record numbers, often to the point of being rent burdened themselves just to stay in their home. Do you know what another fact is? That landlords have the possibility of making more profits and more money because of their economic positioning than tenants do. And lastly, another fact is that wage growth has not and will not continue to make up for the rental burdens that people are incurring in one of the most unaffordable cities in the world. Based on these facts, it's completely unreasonable and cruel to conclude that A, the problem is solely how to preserve buildings and businesses, and B, that the solution to that problem is raising rents on millions of people. If you actually cared about New Yorkers and saw them as your neighbors, your family members, your friends, you would understand that the only option is to freeze the rent and encourage other government entities and lobbyists to create solutions to the problems that business owners are facing. Anything less than that continues the cycle of dehumanizing tenants and normalizing their continued struggle and abuse in such an inequitable system. Because the board doesn't value your affordability testimony and those most deeply affected by its decisions, I'd like to recenter your voices. This is about normalizing each other's humanity and motivating each other to help people see it. In case any of you may have forgotten, here are some of the things we heard from real people who took time out of their busy, complicated, and difficult lives to beg, plead, demand, or request from you all to not raise the rent. Otherwise, they'll have to struggle harder in the next few years. Quote, "When will you finally listen and freeze the rent?" said the wheelchair-bound military vet whose VA benefits are insufficient to meet his daily needs. Quote, "We are not asking you for favors, we are asking for fairness," said the Brooklyn College student, single working mother and survivor of domestic violence. "Why do I have to plead with you all and try to make it so that you understand that this is about human dignity?" said the severely rent-burdened school teacher paying more than 65% of her income in rent. Quote, "Please freeze the rent," end quote. We heard from the girl who was no more than 8 years old, who advocated on behalf of her family to freeze the rent so her parents don't have to work multiple jobs and so they wouldn't have to keep missing her school events. Quote, "Please remember that we are human beings." Quote, "Rent increases are tightening the nooses around our necks." Quote, "We are human beings too." Quote, "How much greed is enough?" Quote, "Housing security is essential to stability." Quote, "Think about what we are saying to you." Quote, "Sympathy. Sympathy. That is all that we are asking for." No one should have to plead, beg, request, or demand dignity, compassion, or fairness from an unelected body of people who do not understand nor seek to understand the hardships of their realities. In closing, I want to remind you, it does not need to be this way. The power has been and always will be with the people. Remember that this is not normal, and we can change these systems, we can change our decision makers, and outcomes like these. Stay strong. Have a good night, y'all.
Thank you. Are there any other discussion by members? Please, Hennessy's.
In 2023, my rent was $1,400. $1,400. Now my rent increased $129. Right? Since 2023, $129. That's about 1/3, or I guess over 1/3 of somebody's SSI or somebody's SSD. At least, I would say it will make rent burden, or even more rent burden, about half of the people that testified in all the hearings that we had. So why would I vote in favor of my own displacement? Right? $129 in my building. There's no new boiler. There's no new windows. My windows were installed 15 years ago. There's no super in my building. There's no investment at all that justify $129 since 2023. So, again, I'm just a privileged tenant. I'm just a privileged tenant, right? But it means, my neighbor, somebody, let's say Mr. Joseph, who lives at 1365 Fort Washington, he needs to move to a room, right? He needs to leave his rent-stabilized apartment and move to a room, and he's looking for a room because he cannot afford rent. He's in housing court, and he's going to be moving from room to room.
My son has a room, and he can't even afford to get a studio.
A room is $1,000 nowadays. Imagine that, right? My grandfather gets his Social Security. He was an electrician. He retired. He gets a pension of $908. Where he's going to find an apartment? That means he needs to live with us, right? And that's the same reality for many of the tenants here. We have to live, how you call it? Overcrowded. So I think the tenants, we spoke very clearly this year. We demanded a rent freeze. We elected a mayor that supports a rent freeze. Hopefully, it cannot be more clear. It cannot be more clear than that. We may not win in November, but we need, let's say, we will. But whether we win or not, we are strong enough to wield our power to get rid of this type of board, to bring systems that actually work for us, the working class and the people that actually have New York standing, right? So continue fighting. We want a rent freeze.
To say the last paragraph of my testimony.
Are there any other members who wish to speak? With that, with no further discussion, I will now call the vote. Genesis Aquino.
No.
Alex Armlovich.
Yes.
Robert Ehrlich.
No.
Arpit Gupta.
Yes.
Reed Jordan.
Yes.
Alex Schwartz.
Yes.
Christina Smith.
No.
Adon Sotran.
Nope.
And Doug Apple, I vote yes. With that, by a vote of 5-4, the motion has passed. Before we close, please note that I have a statement that outlines my rationale for this outcome that will be posted on the RGB website. It is the role of this board to balance the reality of rising costs and financing challenges facing owners with what are deep affordability challenges facing tenants. This is never an easy task and is one that is critical to the future of this essential component of the city's housing stock. The statement will be available at the conclusion of this meeting, and I would instruct the RGB staff to include this statement and all the other statements made tonight as a part of the record and transcript of the meeting. With that, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
No motion.
We have a motion. And a second?
Second.
And I have a second. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.